let's speak now to the health journalist, Laura Lopez-Gonzalez. Laura, good afternoon to you. I really do appreciate the time. We've all seen this happen. There's clearly a lot more manufacturing capability that's being put into our country. What kind of capabilities does a manufacturing campus like this actually give us?
Well, I think certainly a lot of health activists are going to be looking at today's remarks that were spoken last year about the same kind of announcement with a lot of high hopes. It's hitting all the right notes. Patrick Soon-Shiong talking about multiple different kinds of technology transfers that would allow South Africa to do everything from sort of the start of a vaccine all the way to the finishing, which has really been a huge problem for the African continent, which has really historically been confined to those last stages of fill and finish or packaging, really. And also, some exciting prospects about the different kinds of diseases that these kind of technology and these vaccines produced in this building could one day hope to fight HIV, cervical cancer, tuberculosis. And that's really important, not just because these are diseases that are huge killers in South Africa and on the continent, but also because we've heard from the Africa CDC, from President Laura Ramaphosa, that for this kind of venture to be economically viable, our local manufacturing can't just be focused on COVID-19 vaccines. So certainly I think that there's an exciting announcement that's really hitting a lot of the big tick boxes that I think health activists would want to see.
One of the things that we've seen over the last, maybe 10, 20 years is just incredible technological research into health. I mean, for example, statins, these are drugs that reduce cholesterol. When they were first developed, were unbelievably expensive. Now they're incredibly cheap. You can get them in South Africa very, very cheaply. But the point I'm making is that when it comes to certain cancer treatments, when you first get an mRNA vaccine, they're very expensive. So if we now have a production campus here, does that help speed that up? That at the point in the cycle when you've got something new and it's very expensive to when it becomes cheap and everyone can access it, does it shorten the time between those points?
Yeah, I think that, we've had UN commissions about this that have come to South Africa. We've had local commissions about this. The price of treatments and drugs tends to be very complicated, and not all of it is necessarily because it's new. You can look at some cancer treatments that remain insanely expensive in South Africa that are sold for a fraction of the price in India, and that really goes back to our rather broken patent system. So I think it'll be interesting to see what this means. I think for the eventual cost, I think Patrick Soon-Shiong has, throughout this kind of process, really been committed, at least publicly, to saying that he will offer technology and vaccines that would be priced within South Africa's reach. So I think that's a good indication. But I think time will tell how expensive these vaccines were. I definitely think that this is something that has already been discussed between our government, scientists, and Nant Works.
I mean, I suppose, at the beginning, these treatments, these vaccines are expensive for a reason. The machines that make them are also expensive, and you have to make more of those machines before you can ship them here. So the cost would stay high for a little while, no matter where in the world they're produced.
Right, and some of the mRNA technology, that's what's been so attractive about it for companies like Moderna, because you don't need quite as large sort of batches of complicated equipment. Patrick Soon-Shiong's vaccine that's in development now is actually not an mRNA vaccine. That's being tested in Cape Town. But exciting potentials possibly, I spoke to Graham Menkes from the University of Cape Town, who is leading the trial last year. Exciting potential there for that vaccine once it's gone through clinical trial testing, both here in South Africa, Botswana. You heard Soon-Shiong talk about testing it in other countries in the global north. That vaccine might one day be administered as sort of oral drops, which is what the polio vaccine looks like, or even as pills. Again, that's good news for countries like South Africa, other countries on the continent that struggle with that kind of supply chain that's more complicated when you get into vaccines.
What's really important as well is just to have more production centers in the global south. Now, India is actually, part of the global south. It's the country that produces more vaccines than anyone else. But still, the hotbed of research seems to be really, for the moment, in the West. I mean, China, Russia as well, to an extent. But really, we've seen with COVID, it's the United States.
Yeah, and the U.S. government has pumped a lot of money into that. I do think what's interesting is, Politico reported this week that the mRNA hub in Cape Town has sort of gotten to the first kind of big step of producing possibly an mRNA vaccine, somewhat modeled on the Moderna vaccine, but it's of its own kind of making. And that really is possible because, researchers at Wits University have been doing sort of mRNA kind of related research for the past decade. So I think there has been some kind of quiet rumblings among African researchers that's now starting to sort of lay the bedrock for these kind of mRNA hubs. So it'd be interesting to see what this kind of new investment does to that kind of research capacity that's already on the continent. And certainly you're seeing these hubs pop up all over the place. Cape Town, of course, has one. Senegal has one under the Madiba project, which will also produce COVID-19 vaccines for Africa. And of course, today's announcement of the new campus.
Laura Lopez-Gonzalez, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. So much